Welcome to Chapters of Legend, a podcast for people who have to slow down, read deeply, and get lost in great stories. My name is Stavros Stavroulias, and each week we'll explore a new chapter, unpacking the characters, the craft, and little moments that turn pages into legends. This season we're diving into Jade City, so grab your tea, find your reading nook, and let's begin the next chapter together. Chapters of Legend, Season 1, Episode 6, The Calm After the Storm. So, if we remember, the end of the last set of chapters is really there's a lot of figuring out, okay, what's going to happen. There was the fight between Hilo, Lan, and Gam, and Lan kind of gained all this Jade and all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of like the retribution from the attack on Hilo, and we find out that a typhoon is on its way. And so we're picking up this on chapter 24, where chapter 24 is called After the Typhoon, and we're basically picking up right after Typhoon Loco hit Kekon. And this happened right before the Autumn Festival. And so we're finding out that basically this has just turned everything on its head on Kekon, and the war or the conflict between the two clans has kind of been put on hold effectively while they're trying to make sure that they are helping out the civilians, basically. And so a big part of that is the students at Caldershon Academy are getting things ready. They're making packages that have all been paid for by No Peak to provide to people packages like shelter and food and all these things, including all these things that are basically there to help people. And it kind of says right here that Greenbones protected and came to the aid of the common people in times of need. It had been that way for as long as there had been Greenbones. And it kind of just puts into perspective a little bit again what this culture is like on Kekon. That even though there's this impending conflict between the Mountain and the No Peak clan, they're putting that aside to make sure that the people of Kekon, the civilians, are being helped. And so I really like that. That's nice. And so in the start of the chapter, we're looking at Onden's perspective, and we're hearing a little bit about the student's point of view of what's happening here. And I really liked this. I like that we were hearing from a student's point of view because it's different. It's different than what we're seeing when we're looking at it from Hilo or Lan's point of view, where they are so directly involved. The students are kind of set aside, but they know, especially this group of students, because this is Onden's group, and so they're all year 8, they're about to graduate from the academy, and they know that they will very soon be involved. And so they're looking at things a little bit differently. And so we have some people basically saying, what happened was so stupid, it shouldn't have happened. Other people saying, it had to happen this way, there's no other way that it could happen. And it's kind of just this a little bit of like push and pull. And Onden's finding himself a bit caught in the middle here of feeling like in some cases that they're actually like actively insulting the No Peak clan or the calls and the decisions that they're making. And wanting to step up, but his nature, it's not really in his nature to be confrontational in that way, especially one of the people that's the loudest in his displeasure, let's say, is Lot. And we know from earlier that Armin kind of has a bit of a crush on Lot. And so he wants to push back, but he also doesn't, and it's this like weird position that they found himself in. We had a little bit of background and again some just world building here where somebody says, okay, what are you going to do? Leave the academy? You're going to be a year 8 Yomo? And we find out there's this one student named Yomo who basically decided to just leave the academy in year 8 a long time ago, and now he's been kind of made into a folk tale, like a cautionary tale for students. And I like that. Just again, a little bit of world building there. But we find out again that some people were like, the pillar had to take a stand. There was no other option. It was about time that he did. And so again, we're just seeing this from the student's perspective where, I don't know, they don't really know what to make of it. And it honestly feels a little bit like some of them are a bit like scared. They're about to jump into this world. And we find out, I had forgotten this, so Gam is obviously the person that died. And I forgot that Gam was the person that actually rescued or saved Onden from the fight that he was in. And so Onden's having some like mixed feelings here where he is happy that Lan's alive and that he won that fight. But you know, he has this gratitude towards Gam for helping him. So a little bit of interesting situation that that Anden finds himself in. And again, I just find myself thinking here a lot of like, poor Anden, man. He's just in this really weird situation, and he doesn't know what to do. He likes Lot Jin, but he doesn't know what to say here. And you find out as we're going on that some of these students are really well informed because obviously they have siblings or family that are in deeper into the clan. And so they're just there. Poor Anden is he's just stressed out over here, not really sure what to say. And yeah, he wants to be involved, wants to know what's going on. At some point he tries to talk to Hilo about it. And he says, can I do anything to help? And Hilo basically says, can you graduate tomorrow? No? Well then, work on graduating and then you'll be helping soon enough. He just really wants to help and he's not really sure the best way to do it. But at least for now, he's going to try and do what he can to help after the typhoon. And so that's what he does the next little bit of the chapter. So it says here, I really like the description here. When the typhoon was over, Jianlu looked like it had been power washed by a horde of clumsy giants. It gives you a pretty clear picture. It's basically like trees are knocked over, buildings have been damaged, all these things that the flood really just wrecked things. And so as the students and people are helping clean things up, they're just kind of yelling to themselves, Happy Autumn Festival, and being very sarcastic about it because it is obviously not a very great autumn festival this year. And so they're cleaning things up, and Anden's finding himself really confused because, again, now he's paired with Lot. They're in pairs of two, cleaning up debris, and he kind of finds himself thinking, why is Lot with me here? Like, he's kind of recognized that Lot has, in different situations, found himself with Anden, whether it's picking to choose the same team as him or these kind of things, and he's like, is he doing that because he likes me or not? He's not sure. He's really unsure of how to categorize Lot. And when I was reading this next paragraph here, I was like, yes, man, wouldn't it be nice if everybody thought this way? So it says, the Kekanese viewed queerness as a natural occurrence in the population, much like Stone Eyes, and it did not blame the person in question any more than one would blame a child for being born deaf. And I was like, yes, man, wouldn't it be great if other people thought like that? And then I read this next sentence, and I was like, I should have kept reading before I wrote that. Because the next sentence is, like Stone Eyes, though, they were considered unfortunate and unlucky, a sign that a family had fallen into disfavor with the gods, who saw fit to prune the offending lineage as punishment. Yikes. Yikes. So maybe the first part, yes, love it. Second part, not so much. And so Anden's just, again, he's struggling with himself. He already feels like he's cursed because his bloodline has gotten the itches and all these things before, and he's just a little bit not sure what to do with himself. And I just wrote teenage angst. There's like a lot of teenage angst in these pages here because he's working with Lot and he's not sure what to do. And all these things are going on anyways. They're talking a little bit as they are cleaning things up. And as they're doing that, Gaunt appears. And he's giving out food to people for the Autumn Festival, and he calls over the 4 Academy boys, of which Anden is obviously one. And so they go over, he gives them some cake, and he says, yeah, this is for your hard work. Thank you for helping out. And they're all not really super sure what to do, but they say, thank you, Gaunt Jen, and they go off. And right before he's about to go, he grabs Anden by the shoulder and kind of pulls him in, and the way it's described is his arm wrapped around his shoulder with the slow weight of a python's coils. And just kind of pulls him in, and he says, I'm disappointed you didn't accept our offer. And Anden basically thinks to himself, now he thought, Gaunt Ash tried to kill my cousins. He wants to see everyone in the Call family dead. And he basically says, yep, don't even talk to me, right? Like, don't worry about this. And he walks away, and right at the end here, Gaunt kind of says that he's within the favor of the Pillar of the Mountain. And I don't really know if that's true. It feels like Gaunt is just saying things here. But either way, he kind of just walks it off. And when he gets back over to Lot Jin, he asks, what was he talking to you about? And Anden just says, yep, he was just wishing me a happy autumn festival. And he wanted to make it clear that if I became a fist to No Peak, the mountain will make a point of killing me, which is probably true. Moving on to chapter 25, Lines Drawn. In this chapter, we are looking again a little bit at what's going on from Hilo's point of view. And so Hilo here, he's trying to figure out what's going on with the docks, and we're seeing a bit from Hilo's point of view what's been happening with Barrow, right? We just found out that Barrow in the last chapter of the last episode, that Barrow has been stealing things from the docks, and now Hilo is trying to figure out what's happening here. And basically that things have been put on, like, not on hold, but it's really disrupting his ability to do things in the armpit because he has to focus so much on the docks. The docks that is like prime no peak territory that he shouldn't have to worry about. And he is absolutely sure that even though these are just common petty criminals, that they're being funded in some way by the Mountain. And obviously we know that they are. And apparently they caught some of these criminals, and basically Ken is calling him and saying, what do I do with these guys? And Hilo says, kill 2 of them, let the most talkative one go, to send a message. And he's in the hospital with Tar, and he's talking to Tar, and he says, good news, you're getting out of here soon. And they're just talking a little bit, and you find out that Hilo has sent basically one of the Call family's prized possessions, their prized kind of resources, Dr. True, who is a greenbone doctor that works at the academy, to come and look at Tar and has helped him out a lot. And we're basically just finding out that Tar has been in some rough shape, but he's on the mend and he's coming through. Hilo tells him that he's going to marry his sister, and Tar says, I'd follow you anywhere, whether you married one or not, right? Just get me out of this hospital already. Which is nice. Again, just the relationship between Tar, Ken, and Hilo, really like that relationship. I think they're a really good team, and I think they work really well together. And then we jump into Hilo talking to Wen, and Wen basically accepting to move into into the Call estate after everything that happened with Hilo. And basically she says, now that I know how badly your enemies want you dead, my pride isn't worth the risk of them using me to hurt you. So she decides she's going to move into the Horn's house. Hilo's going to move into the main house for now until they get officially married, and they're going to move into the Horn's house together, live there. Really nice. The scene started out really freaking cute and goes a little bit downhill, and we're going to get there. But at some point, as they're chatting, Wen says to Hilo, and again, this just to me like showcases how smart and perceptive she is in the situation. She says, Lin is a good peacetime pillar, but he's not a commander of fists. There's no one else with enough jade and respect in the clan to be a strong wartime horn in your place. The Mountain knows that without you, Lin will have no choice but to give in to them. That's why they're clever to want to kill you first, and why they'll try again. And it's just clear, like, she can see it so well, what's going on. And I really like that. I really like that she's happy about that. But as they're chatting here, Hilo kind of says, like, I'm excited to get married. I thought you'd be excited. And she kind of says, should I be? Womanishly thrilled about dress shopping and banquet planning, while others plan to murder my fiancé and my brothers? And it's like, oh, shoot. Fair play, Wen. Like, this is fair. And Hilo says, I'll always have enemies, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be happy. And they're kind of going back and forth in this way. And Wen, like, I really love her. She's just a strong woman that sticks to her morals and her values. And she says, she's like, now that I'm going to be a part of the family, there's no reason why I shouldn't work for the clan. Ken and Tar are your first and second fists. You could use me too. Put me somewhere in No Peak where I'll be of help in the war when it comes. And Hilo says, that's not something you have to worry about. And she says, why? Because I'm a woman? And they're kind of just going back and forth in this way. And he says, no, because it's between green bones. And she says, I come from a greenbone family. You said it yourself. I have the heart and mind of a Jade warrior. And he says, that doesn't make you one. And they're just going back and forth. And there's this like power struggle here. And at some point, Wen says, other clans make use of their stone eyes. Stone eyes can move freely through the city. We can handle Jade without getting off an aura. You told me that Temben, the carver, is a stone eye from the Mountain, and he does their bidding. Still. And here, basically, Hilo kind of starts to lose it a little bit, and he's getting angry. And he says, "You will never be like Temben." And he's just angry. And it says he seized Wen by the arm so quickly that she didn't even have a time to flinch. He was aware at all times of how slow and soft she was, how vulnerable, how easily he could hurt her or break her. And the thought of her in peril from his enemies, other greenbones, filled him with a fear he did not have for his own life. And he's just talking about how the Mountain will do anything. They'll stoop to any level, use civilians, use children, use anything. And he said, I won't ever use you like that. Do you understand? And she says, yes. And while this is somewhat sweet and you can understand where Hilo is coming from, I really don't love that he's making these decisions for her. She is clearly, a brave soul. She wants to be a part of this. She wants to help. She wants to feel useful. And she just can't. And then he starts to say, and again, this is where I feel like Hilo is just like digging himself a bigger grave here. And he says, if you're bored, we can find you some kind of work. You can we can go back to school, or we can get you a business, and we can pull these connections. And she says, yeah, whatever. We can think about it more later. And it's a shame. What should have been a really beautiful moment between the two of them ends up just not really being. And here we see, right after this kind of interaction, that Hilo's thinking to himself, like, he doesn't know what to do here. He wants to speak to Shay. He wants to be as good as he can. And it says, as someone who was as open and expressive with his emotions, Hilo had long harbored the vaguely resentful suspicion that he loved his family more than they loved him back. And with no one was this feeling more pronounced than with his sister. And I think that is a really clear indication. Like, we've talked about this throughout this whole book so far. Hilo is so open with his emotions, and he's so, like, whenever he has an emotion or a feeling, he's just fully in with that feeling and emotion. He doesn't deviate from it. But he's not really sure what to do. He feels hurt by her, and he knows that he said hurtful things when she left. He doesn't know how to get back into that relationship with Shay. Really wants to, but not really sure how to do it. And it's basically just not good news here. Like I said, this should have been a really nice chapter, but ends up being just kind of rough for Hilo. Things seem to be getting to him. He's feeling torn up. And at the end of the chapter, the last sentence is, being the horn had become entirely too much work and stress, because he's not sure exactly how to fight the mountain, how to take care of the docks. He wants to get married to Wen, but now there's this confusion. He's not really sure, like, why Wen is behaving this way, even though it seems pretty clear. And he's just also, the stress is getting to him. And we're about to see that the stress is definitely getting to our boy Lan. And so this next chapter here, chapter 26, War Maneuvers, we're basically in this big boardroom. A bunch of No Peak Lanternmen are there, and they're talking about what's the plan going forward, basically, with the war coming on. Doru is there, they're talking. At some point, there's, they're letting know, like, the Horn has made a priority to defend our territories and all these things, and they're having these conversations. And at some point, like, they're asking all these questions, and Lan basically says, I cannot guarantee there will not be any impact on your businesses. We are being threatened by another clan and have to be prepared for difficult times. What I can promise is that we will defend ourselves, every part of the clan, every sector, every business. Pretty well said. Like, not much more can be done about that. We're going to try our best. That's the best we can offer you. And he kind of ends the meeting there. And then as he's ending the meeting, he stops Doru from leaving after the Lanternmen leave. And he's chatting with him, and he says, listen, I need you to go to Yucatan. And it's clear to us, okay, he's sending him away. But Doru kind of pushes back. I mean, like, is this really a good time for him to be leaving? And he's pushing back a little bit. And, like, totally fair enough for Doru to be pushing back. Like, I obviously want him gone, but it is a bit fishy to send him away right now, right when war is about to start and these things are about to happen. And Lan has a pretty good reasoning for it, but this whole situation with Doru, Lan, like, really expertly plays this move here. So he starts to showcase his anger a little bit, and he says, I need someone I can trust to do this, Doru-jin. I wouldn't send anyone less capable or discreet. We've had our differences lately, but we can't afford to have any doubts come between us right now. Will you do as I say from now on or not? If not, I'll accept your resignation as weatherman. You can keep the house. I wouldn't make you move. And I think that last little bit, just showcasing that respect, right? You can keep the house. I wouldn't make you move. The next sentence just says he saw that he gambled correctly, because Doru realizes, okay, well, there's this frustration here, but he clearly trusts me still. And Doru says, you wound me, Lansei. I've disagreed with you only out of concern for the clan and for your safety. You're right, of course. We must find out more about what's happening, the mountains operations in Yucatan. I'll leave tomorrow. And just like super well played by Lan, well done. And he says, "Thank you, Uncle Doru. Thank you so much. We'll make sure we'll send a couple hornsmen with you to Yucatan to make sure that you're safe in the country." And you can see there that Doru, right afterwards, he's kind of dissolved at this news, and he's just, he guessed at the truth. Lan indeed wanted information about the mountains in Yucatan, but more importantly, he wanted Doru out of the way, watched constantly by Hilo's men, something he would not be able to accomplish here where Doru held so much sway on Ship Street. And Doru is just put in a really tough position, and he says, "Whatever you think is necessary, Lan say." And just really well played by Lan. Then right after this, as soon as Doru leaves, Lan gets Woon to arrange this meeting with a bunch of the Royal Council of Kakan, and here we can see that, like I said, just like it's getting to our man Hilo, it's getting to our man Lan in different ways. Lan's making this meeting, and he's talking to a bunch of these councilmen and these politicians, and basically letting them know that there's been fishiness happening in the KJA, and that he wants full operations of jade mining to stop, so that a full external audit can be done. He has basically proof that things have not been good, and he's just putting this thing, and he's making big moves here. But as he's making these big moves, he is being affected by his jade and the new jade that he's received. And I'm really fearing for Lan's health. It's really not looking good for him in my mind. I really feel like he is in a bad way. It's saying that he's not even drinking his tea, because if he drinks tea, he's going to sweat too profusely. And at some point, as he's talking, he literally is not even able to hear what's going on. It says here that his head started to throb, and he almost only could hear as if it was like a television's, like a staticky signal. And he leans into Woon and he says, "Pretend you're telling me something." And then he says, "Okay, like, do you want me to cancel this meeting? What's going on?" And then says, "No, just tell me what he just said." And he says, "Okay," he wants assurances. And like, it's really good that Woon is there and that there's somebody that Lan trusts able to help him out here, but clearly this is getting to him. And in the end, he's able to make it out of this conversation pretty unscathed. He gets the politicians to do what he wants to do. But it's just so clear that it's not looking good for Lan. Something's going on. So it says here, Dr. True had told him that his key, the essential aura producing energy of each individual that could be amplified and manipulated by the contact with Jade, was damaged, like an overstrained muscle. It might take weeks, even months, until it fully recovered. And that's from the hit that Gam gave him when he channeled into him. And Lan doesn't know what to do. And so at the end, he tells Woon, "I need to make a phone call." And we don't know who he's going to call. Well, we're going to find that out in a second here. But I really, like I said, I wrote at the end of this chapter, I really love the relationship between Woon and Lan. I'm excited for Woon, hopefully, to become the next Weatherman. But I don't love what's happening with Lan. It is unsettling, to say the very least. Chapter 27, Mistakes Revealed. In this one, we're looking at Shay. And again here, I'll just say it. These Shay chapters are becoming more and more frustrating to read, because she's just so unsure of what she wants. And it's so... I truly believe that she's going to join the clan. And so I think because I have that belief, it is becoming more and more just frustrating when she is not. So anyways, here she's on her way to Marina, where her mother lives, and so she's going to visit her mother. And I mean, it's a pretty nice, like, it's a really beautiful, the descriptions of this place, like just this like idyllic seaside town, really small, not a lot of stuff going on, and it just sounds like a really like beautiful place, like really beautiful, really nice for anybody who lives there. But it just sounds like at first I thought she was trying to figure herself out, and then it just kind of dissolves. She's talking to her mother, and she's just feeling like there's these contradictions. Her mother is kind of just... She feels her mother's company is depressing. I don't think her mother is depressed. Maybe she is. She seems like she's living a pretty decent life here. But it's clear to me, like, her mother is very sexist and is like, yep, like, the green bone stuff is for the men. Like, I'm happy that you're not dealing with that. I'm happy that you've decided to give up your Jade. And then, like, then Shay's, like, feeling upset. Like, why would her mother say this? And again, it's just like this, like, it's just crazy. But then we're finding out a little bit of what happened with Shay and the fight between herself and her granda and Hilo and Lan when she was leaving to go to Hispania. We found out that basically she's been giving away, maybe not clan secrets, but definitely Greenbone secrets and Kekon secrets to the Hispanians because she was feeling appreciated by them effectively. And a pretty rough line, but basically Coulson at some point says to her in just a rage once he finds out about her involvement with the Hispanians, at least whores only sell what belongs to them. A horrible line to say to your granddaughter. But when you keep finding out what's happening, basically, like, the Hispanians were just, like, asking about, oh, what about this politician? How does the KJA work? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of that? And it seems like Shay was just really willing and happy to give away this information and just tell them because she felt valued in a way that she didn't feel valued, and she felt that she was able to do something that her brothers couldn't do here. And just really frustrating. In the end of this chapter, or the end of this section, when we're finding out a bit more about this, it says plain out, she'd been a fool, but sadly, even fools were entitled to their pride. And learning more about what she actually did with the Hispanians, I thought at first, I mean, obviously we've been led to believe that it's basically just that she wanted to marry an Hispanian and that was enough for them to freak out on her. But no, she was truly doing some pretty crazy stuff. Like, that's pretty, like, you're kind of like, you're traitor to your country a little bit there by giving out some of this information. So I kind of understand why her grandfather was so frustrated and so upset. Like, maybe not fully valid, but also, yeah, pretty rough. Pretty rough. So then we're basically, like, she's on her way back to Genloon, and she comes back, on her way back, she's like, I'm going to rededicate myself to my job search. I'm going to find some jobs and all these things. She's like, really, like, the main thing that she was, and she didn't want to become like her mother. And I just kind of am feeling here, like, keep telling yourself that. Keep telling yourself that you're not going to be like your mother and all these things, and just... Anyway, she gets to her apartment, she realizes she forgot her key at her mother's apartment, or her mother's house, and so now she has to try and figure out a different way into her apartment. She goes to first knock on her neighbor's door, but realizes that he hasn't been around because there's a whole bunch of leftover mail, junk mail, on his front porch. And so she's like, oh, that's a bit weird, but whatever. So she goes trying to climb into her apartment from the fire escape. And as she's climbing the fire escape, she looks into her neighbor's apartment and realizes, what? This is weird. And that basically the apartment is effectively empty. There's a sleeping bag on the chair, on the ground, a, like, fold-out chair, a small TV, and she's like, this does not look like the apartment of somebody who's been living here for the past 4 months like I have. And she jumps into the apartment, looks into the fridge. There's, like, only, like, 2 bottles of soda. There's, like, a couple of crackers in the pantry. Basically, no one is living here long term. And so she decides, I'm going to sit here and wait for my good neighbor, Kon Yu, to come back. And eventually, Kon opens the door and sees her and is like, oh, shoot. And his eyes go wide. And she jumps up, slams the door, pulls out her knife, and is, like, talking to him. And she says, call him, tell him to come over right now. And so he calls Hilo. He says, Hilo Jin, your sister has a knife on me. She wants to talk. Hilo starts laughing. He says, okay, I'll be there soon. And eventually Hilo gets there. And there's this moment that, like, could have been cute between Kon and Shay. And Kon's a good-looking guy and all this stuff, but, like, it just really... It doesn't work out. It does not work out. It's not great. Like I said, there's, like, this kind of little flirtation that's going on, but then basically Hilo shows up, starts laughing, and eventually tells Kon to get out of there. And it just says, in one unfortunate instant, Shay's perception of Kon transformed. Her friendly, attractive next-door neighbor was just another one of her brother's many underlings. She was bothered by how much it aggravated her that Kon did not even spare her a parting glance as he left the room. And then there's just this confrontation between Hilo and Shay. Stay out of my life, she screams, and they're just at each other's throat a little bit. And I just, like, fair enough by Hilo here, because people know that you're a call, Shay. Like, you can't just pretend that you're not a part of the call family, that you're not going to be targeted and all these things. And in this argument that they're having, Shay finds out, wait a second, I didn't know what happened to Anden, because, basically Hilo says, like, it's not like they went after Anden, like, they're not gonna not go after you. And Hilo tells her, like, yeah, they took Anden on boat day and threatened him and all this stuff. And he kind of just like, what are you doing? Like, what's going on? And she's going to, I don't need your advice or your protection. And he says, no, you didn't. Never before. But now we're at war with the mountain, and you're still acting like you've nothing to do with any of it. You're ignoring that you're a call. And I'm like, there it is. Thank you. You are a call, regardless of whether you don't have your Jade or whatever. They could come for you. They could take you. And that's that. And I kind of, like, honestly, thank you, Hilo. Like, somebody needs to get this through Shay's head a little bit, that she's not immune to protection. And eventually she finds out that Lan is actually the person that wanted to make sure that there was somebody watching her. And she almost, like, gets a little bit less angry when it's friends with Lan and not Hilo. Which I'm like, okay, like, annoying, but whatever, sure. And she kind of says, I don't want any of your people on me anymore. I don't want to see anybody. I don't want to do anything. And Hilo says, okay, like, sure. And when she leaves and she comes back, her landlord is there, and he's like, hey, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that you were a call. If you want, I have a nicer apartment that you could stay in. Same rent, of course. Like, I wouldn't charge you any more rent. And again, it's just like, you are foolish if you think that you can come back to Gekon and not be treated like a call, because you are a call. So again, just frustrations with Shay. I like her as a character, and I'm excited to see where she goes, but just currently what she's doing and the decisions she's making, I'm just like, oh, come on, Shay, figure it out. Anyway, so this last chapter, chapter 28, Deliveries and Secrets. So here we find out who it was that Lan called. He called Anden. And at first we're like, why did he call Anden? Like, why would he call Anden? What does he want Anden to do? And we find out that he's been asking Anden, or he asked Anden to pick up some packages for him. So this is Anden's second time picking up these packages for Lan. And it's just like a white envelope, unmarked envelope that he brings to the call residence. And immediately I was like, oh shoot, this is Shine. This is SN1. This is not good. So he goes to the call residence, he talks to Lan, and they have this like really cute moment in interaction between the two of them where Lan basically like, Lan is like, hey, like, how's school going? How are things going on? Like, all this stuff. And they have this little back and forth, and they kind of start practicing some deflection, and it's really sweet. Like, there's this one moment where Lan says to him, I'm not worried about because he's asking about his academics and stuff, and he says, I'm not worried about your rank, Anden. I'm asking about school because I'm sure there's lots of people talking on campus these days about the clans. You're bound to hear a lot of rumors and opinions, if you haven't already. I don't want you to feel upset or distracted by it. Just focus on your own studies. And there's this clear sense of care there, that Lan clearly cares a lot about Anden and how he is and who he is. And so it's just really nice to see that. And so they have this little kind of back and forth where Anden is feeling like Lan's energy is off. And he's continuing to feel it, and he's not sure really what to do. But he knows, whereas Hilo and Shay always felt like true cousins to him, Lan always felt a bit more like an older uncle. And they practice some deflection, they practice some defensive deflection, some offensive deflection. And again, really cool to see some of the magic system at work here. And I think the magic system is it's so cool. It's so cool, the fact that how this Jade works, and how you can use it in different ways. And then you're seeing that Lan is so proud of Anden, and he's so happy to have him as a part of the family and a part of the clan. But now that Anden has some Jade on him with his training band, he's able to feel Lan's aura so much more, and that it is just like so off. The aura is so off, and it's not good. And so anyways, they do this a little bit, at the end, Lan has to go because he's getting a call. And so he says, yeah, like, Onden's like, yeah, I'll see myself out. Don't worry about it. And as they're going to do that, Onden's about to see himself out. And as he is, he kind of is pulled a little bit. And he says, he thinks to himself, like, I need to know what's going on with Lan. Like, this does not feel right. It doesn't feel good. And so he ends up looking in to the cupboard as he's leaving, because he's putting everything away. It's a nice situation, but he's putting everything away. And he looks into the cupboard and he tries to look in the envelope, and he sees that what's in the envelope is, in fact, SN1. And as he's looking at this, he's been kind of doing this for a little bit. Lan comes back from his call and sees that Onden has found this. And now there's this really tense interaction between Onden and Lan, where Lan gets really frustrated, really angry, almost like pins Onden to the wall. And Onden is just scared for this man who he views as a cousin, as a brother, as an uncle. And he just says, "You're not sick, are you? With the itches?" And you see Lan's face change, and they kind of go back and forth like this. And Lan just tries to reassure Onden, "I'm not sick. Don't worry about it. It just, this extra jade. It just takes a bit for me to get to it and to attune to it." He tells him that he actually got pretty hurt by that fight with Gam. And there's just this really sweet interaction between the two of them where, I mean, I'm saying it's sweet. It is, but you can see again, I'm so worried for Lanny here, because his vibe goes back and forth from sweet and caring with Onden to frustrated and angry, and it's just not the Lan that Onden is used to seeing. And it's so clear that he's being affected in all these different ways, and it's not good. And so basically Lan makes him promise not to tell anybody, and as soon as Onden promises not to tell anyone, he thinks to himself, I should break this promise. I should tell Hilo. But then he thinks, what would Hilo say? Hilo would just say, don't worry about this. This isn't your responsibility. Some people have to take SN1. And then he thinks, isn't that true that, Hilo had suggested him to take SN1 not that long ago? So he kind of just leaves and feels like he's not sure what's going on with Lan. Feels this sense of fear and worry. And he just leaves. And that's basically where we end that chapter. He feels, again, at the end of this chapter is he wished he could make himself cry to release some of the pressure, like lifting the top of a boiling kettle. And that's the end of chapter 28. And I really feel like this set of chapters that we read today it was really like setting a bunch of stuff up. There's the big typhoon and this momentary peace between the clans, and in that peace, pieces are being moved for what I think inevitably is going to be much more damage and much more carnage very, very shortly. This was a really good set of chapters. I was really happy with these chapters. It was, again, a lot of setup, but I'm really excited to see where things go from here onwards. Before we move on, and kind of some planning for next episode. My favorite quote from this chapter actually comes from the first chapter from this set, and it's actually when Gaunt was talking to Onden and trying to basically convince him, and Onden says to him, "I may look a Spaniard on the outside, Gaunt-chan, but that doesn't mean I can be bribed like a dog." And it's just so clear, so clean. I like that moment of Onden being firm and just really caring about himself and his values, and I think that's a really good moment for him. So I really, really like that. Next episode, we're going to be looking at chapters 29 to 32, and that will be coming out on September 2nd, so you can look out for that. But I'm really excited to see where things go now. just things are clearly starting to pick up, and I'm just excited to see where they land and what happens next. So that's the end of this chapter. Thank you for joining me on Chapters of Legend. I hope you found something new to notice, a detail to treasure, or a story thread to ponder. Until next time. If you're enjoying the journey, you can help others find the podcast by following, rating, or sharing. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can find the show everywhere at Chapters of Legend. You can email in at chaptersoflegend@gmail.com, and you can follow me for more random content on YouTube. Until next time, keep turning the pages and keep living in the legend.